Inspired by the grim, gothic palette and often bizarre yet beautiful stylings from wargaming's most influential artists, the John Blanche Masterclass series includes a carefully curated collection of new paints designed with the master himself. Volume 1 and 2 from the Masterclass series will be put to use today as we paint up a Grimdark Space Marine. During development, Thomas was fortunate to sit and learn from the master himself, and he's in the studio today to showcase some of what he learned. Our tutorial begins with a Blood Angels Blade Guard Captain. Thomas began with a Zenithal primer coat of Warpaint's Air Primer, matte black, and matte white. John does not use an airbrush, so Thomas will apply a rough base coat using our Masterclass miniature dry brush to apply this base color of Blanche Berry all over the miniature. This color sits as the darkest color when used with the desaturated violet color triads from the Warpaint's Fanatic family. Thanks to the insane coverage of the Fanatic formulation, Thomas is able to achieve easy coverage with this method. After he's finished blocking everything in, he'll use a regiment brush to ensure that he didn't miss any hard-to-reach places. The next step will be to apply some shading to the details of the miniature. For that, we'll employ the wash technique using Grimdark Shadow, a gritty, greenish-brown-black wash. This wash was developed to be a universal shadow tone that works well across many different colors. You see, John Blanche's painting style is distinctly additive rather than reductive. Traditional painting often builds from larger, broader strokes, gradually refining details with highlights and sharp edges. In contrast, the Blanchitsu approach involves layering thin glazes and washes repeatedly, building depth and shadow over time. Each layer subtly enriches the piece, creating a complex interplay of light and shade that emerges gradually through accumulation rather than precision-driven reduction. I know that was a mouthful, but we're going to get back to adding even more shadow and contrast using the darkness, a very deep green-blue, and we'll use this to apply a shadow glaze over the red armor. Already you can see the contrast of the feathered blue over the desaturated violet gives an ominous and grim effect. John doesn't play with a lot of colors. He heavily relies on ivory, ochre, and vermilion to shift colors as he wants. So Thomas will mix in a bit of the ivory white from the range with Blanche Berry to begin the first layered highlights, focusing this on the raised areas. He will use this to define some of the sharper details as well. The miniatures from Games Workshop offer some great details, so take your time and carefully highlight them until you've reached the volume and contrast that you like. Now with pure ivory white, Thomas will refine those details and hard edges before tying all of the layers and glazes together with an additional glaze of Blood Moon Red, a bright orangish red. This is a new speed paint, and this will help to resaturate the initial reds from the magenta base coat with the blue shades and ivory highlights. Now once that Blood Moon Red has had time to dry, use some of that ivory white to pick out the hard edges and apply spectral highlights. Now we're going to start painting in all of the gold. Base coat your Aquila and other gold details with Emperor Gold. This is a rich gold that has an element of magenta pigment to it and makes for an optimal gold base coat. Next, choose Banshee Brown and use this to apply a base coat to the tunic on the miniature. You can mix in some ivory white and begin applying your first layered highlights, focusing on the raised areas. It looks stark at first, but as acrylic paints tend to dry, they do become a bit more dull. Thomas will continue layering with this mix until he's reached an opacity that he likes before adding some Moonbeam Yellow to the mix. This yellow may be one of the most saturated yellows that I've ever used, so a little will go a long way in shifting the hue of this mix, which Thomas is going to apply to the Purity Seal parchment on the Blade Guard Captain. Then grab some more of that Emperor Gold and go ahead and base in some of the details that we waited to paint while we handled the robes and other bits. Now, Heavy Metal may be my new favorite paint name. It's also a dark gray metallic that will be a real asset to the Warpaint's Fanatic range. Excited to see its film debut on the blade of this Space Marine sword. You can also use this to base in other metallic details like the buckle, chain, and the vents. We're going to utilize the Grimdark Shadow once again to shade these areas. The uniform shadow is a key part of John's own miniature painting, so this gritty wash was a must for him in this Masterclass series. Take your time and be sure to add some definition with this wash to all of the details we've just painted. Now we're going to re-establish some of the volumes and highlights on the miniature with Ruddy Terra and Ivory White mixed together. We're going to use this on the parchment. Ruddy Terra is a bright terracotta color, and I'm confident this will find its way into the rotation of world-class painters and army painters alike. If you hadn't noticed already, Thomas is utilizing only the paints found in the John Blanche Masterclass series, but you don't have to. Instead of mixing colors, you can always reach for your favorite and faithfuls from the Warpaints Fanatic range. These colors with John Blanche were smartly developed to suit his palette and also complement the core range. Next, we'll apply our first layered highlight of Ivory White. Using Ruddy Terra, Thomas will apply some textured highlights to the leather belt, pouches, and his holster. Reinforce that with a mix of Ruddy Terra and Ivory White. Just apply this on the hard edges and be a bit restrained, as less is more, and if you do that correctly, you'll have a realistic and effective worn leather. Then we'll pick out the inner casings with a mix of the darkness and Ivory White. Just apply this over the raised edges. We'll carefully apply a highlight of the Emperor's Gold over the darkened down gold after the wash steps. See, the wash dulls down some of the reflectiveness of the metal flake and it darkens it down a little bit. And repeat this across all of the gold on the miniature. Whether you're applying a simple detailed highlight, edge highlight, or even a dry brush as Thomas is doing here, just helps to make that rich gold pop again. Now this next part will, well, I think, gosh, Thomas, can you get your head out of the way? Well, his notes say he was using blighted green, but I'm not sure where. I'm guessing this is a base coat to the lens on the helmet. Right, that's exactly what he was doing. Well done, Thomas. There's the head again. I'm gonna guess he's mixed in a bit of moonbeam yellow this time to the blighted green to highlight the lenses again. All right, since we're here, why don't we just take a quick peek inside Thomas's brain? Yeah, crickets. Oh, and tacos. All right, back to our regularly scheduled programming. Just apply a small dot of Ivory White to the corner of the lens to give it that nice reflective look. I was very happy to learn that Mr. Blanche is a fan of checkers, just like I am, and Thomas is going to be doing some checkering himself. This is about the 4th video Thomas has done where he has showed off his freehand skills with checkers, and I believe that there are some really old videos where I was doing checkers as well. Fact is, checkers are more simple than they appear, but they look so good. Just thin your paints and be confident when you apply those outlines, because these outlines will assist in filling in each square due to the meniscus effect that grid outline provides. Once our yellow is applied, you can add a second color, alternating. This time we're using the darkness, and then go back and tidy that up with your moonbeam yellow. Thomas mixed in some of the blighted green from his palette with the darkness, and he'll use this to apply some striping and striations to the parchment. Now, it wouldn't be a blood angel without at least one drop of blood, or maybe it's a teardrop for their fallen Primarch. Rest in peace, Sanguinius. We'll move on to the power sword. Using the darkness, Thomas will add a shadow glaze to the sword, and he'll follow that up with a blended highlight of heavy metal. Thin down some blighted green with a bit of stabilizer and use this to glaze the shadows of the gold. Believe it or not, green is a really great glaze color for golds. You wouldn't think so, but the proof is in the finished painting. And wait until you see the final results, which you're about to, because you just need to finish off your basing theme with a theme that suits your eye or matches the rest of your army. With that done, your Grimdark Blood Angel is complete. Collect a part of wargaming history and paint in the path of a master with the John Blanche Masterclass series. Learn more about the paints inside both sets and how they were intelligently designed to complement your existing Warpaints Fanatic and Speed paints when you visit thearmypainter.com.